right, so on to our Italian vegetable stew known as giambota. And it's very similar to ratatouille, except it has potatoes and it's a little bit heartier and more stew-like. And the first thing you do before you make a vegetable stew is cut the vegetables. So here we have a 12-ounce eggplant. And to cut up this eggplant into half-inch pieces. So I trimmed the eggplant, and now, of course, we're going to peel it. And then you just cut them crosswise into half-inch dice. Okay, now we have an onion that's chopped, and this is a pound of russet potatoes that have been peeled and cut into half-inch pieces. And now we're on to 2 bell peppers. Now you can use different colors if you want, or you can use all red or all yellow. Stay away from green, though. Green has a slightly more bitter flavor, whereas the yellow and the red are slightly sweeter. And my trick for bell peppers is to cut off the top and the bottom, and then I pull out the core. You sort of knock out any seeds, and then you can slice the pepper down through the side and lay it flat. And then you can cut away any...
Perform rib surgery.
Yes, right, rib surgery. And then you have a nice flat piece that's easy to cut into half-inch pieces. And now on to the zucchini. This recipe has 2 zucchini. They're each about 8 ounces. Though I have to say, growing up, my mother used to go zucchini that were like as big as baseball bats and very bitter. You don't want to use those.
You throw those out.
Yes. Or you play with them in the yard. So the one thing about zucchini is that you can seed it, and those seeds have a little bit of that bitterness. Easy to take it out if you just take a spoon and you sort of scrape them out, much like a cucumber.
So you were so poor growing up that all you could play with was large zucchini? Is that what you're saying?
They were by far the most fun. And of course, in the seeds is also a lot of the moisture. So when you take out the seeds, you allow the zucchini to brown better once it hits a hot skillet. And now we'll cut this zucchini down into half-inch cubes. Now, a lot of recipes for giambota we found did the same thing, which is they got out a big pot, they threw all the vegetables in, they cooked it down until it was stew-like, and that's just a lousy idea because obviously these vegetables don't cook at the same rate. Plus, there was really no room for flavor development, so the sauce tasted thin and watery. So what we found was best to do was to think about the vegetables in terms of quick cooking vegetables, like the peppers and zucchini, that are better off with drier heat so they can get a little browning, and slower cooked vegetables like the potatoes and the onions, which of course really like a more moist heat and a longer cooking time so that they turn tender. So the one vegetable that sort of straddles the line between fast and slow cooking is the eggplant. And what we found is it's better if we put it with the slow cooking vegetables because it will break down and make that sauce very silky and have some texture rather than those thin, watery sauces that some of the other recipes we saw had. But the one thing about it is it's very spongy and it soaks up the oil pretty readily. So to prevent it from doing that, we have a method where we toss it with a little salt. This is 1½ teaspoons table salt. So I've lined the plate with coffee filters. I'm going to spray it with a little vegetable oil spray. And we'll spread the eggplant into an even layer over the plate. And we'll throw it in the microwave on high for 8 to 12 minutes, but I'll toss it about halfway through. So you can see, 8 to 12 minutes in the microwave is quite a transformation.
It did.
It's a lot of moisture in eggplant.
Honey, I shrunk the eggplant.
So I have 2 tablespoons of olive oil heating up over high heat. So we're going to add the eggplant. We're also going to add the onions and the potatoes. We're just going to cook these for a couple minutes until we start to see a little bit of browning. All right, so while those are cooking, I'm going to take some whole canned tomatoes and we're going to drain them. And the question is, of course, why don't you just use canned diced tomatoes? But the problem with canned diced tomatoes is they have a lot of calcium chloride, which of course helps the tomatoes retain their shape. And that works against us in this stew where we want the tomatoes to break down and make the sauce. But these whole tomatoes will really break down quite quickly. And you want to break them open before you put a knife through it and juice squirts everywhere. You only do that once. And I'm saving the juice because, of course, we'll add that to the pot, too. All right, and I'm just going to give them a rough chop here. So this is looking pretty good. The browning has started to form on the bottom of the pot, and the potatoes have started to turn a little translucent on the outside. And now what we're going to do is clear the center of the pot and add a little bit of tomato paste. And by clearing the center of the pot and putting it right into the hot pot, gives it time to caramelize. We're going to help that out with just a little bit more oil. It's a tablespoon of olive oil. So it'll take about 2 minutes or so for this tomato paste to get a little darker and a little deeper flavor. So now we're just going to stir that tomato paste in and add our liquid, which is going to be water. This is 2 cups of water. And I'm just going to scrape up the fond on the bottom of the pot. The water will really allow the flavors of the vegetables themselves to shine through. It's starting to smell good. All right, so now we're going to add our chopped tomatoes along with the tomato juice. And now the interesting thing about this stew is that the potatoes aren't going to break down and turn into mush because of all the tomatoes. That acidity will actually help the potatoes hold their shape.
But the eggplant's going to essentially dissolve into this? Yeah.
Make a nice, rich, silky sauce. All right, so I can see it coming to a boil. Now I'm going to put the lid on, turn the heat down to medium, and let it cook gently until the potatoes are just tender, which could take 20 to 25 minutes. So while our stew is simmering slowly off to the side, we're going to focus our attention on the quicker cooking vegetables. And I have a tablespoon of olive oil heating up in this skillet over high heat. And then we're going to add our zucchini and our bell pepper. Just a little bit of salt, half a teaspoon of salt. We're just going to cook these so that they release their moisture. We're going to cook them for about 10 to 12 minutes until they get a little bit of browning. You can see they've gotten nice and brown. They're starting to wilt a little bit and cook through. We're only going to cook them until they're tender. So they're just finishing up, but I have another trick up my sleeve to give this stew some flavor, which is to make a tostada. And we're going to make it using basil. This is 1/3 of a cup. Some fresh oregano. We don't use oregano a lot in this kitchen. It smells good. This is 1/3 of a cup. Fresh oregano leaves, a little bit of olive oil, this is 2 tablespoons, some garlic, this is 6 cloves, 6 cloves of minced garlic.
I don't think I go out in public for a couple days after that.
It won't be that bad, I promise. And just 1/4 teaspoon crushed red pepper flakes. And much like a pesto, we're just gonna pulse it until it's in a good puree. So much like when we added the tomato paste to the stew and we cleared the center of the skillet, we're going to do the same thing here and add the tostada to the center of the skillet so it sees just a little bit of heat. It'll temper some of that garlic, of course. We're just going to cook it for about a minute. I'll mash it into the skillet, stir it right into the vegetables. Oh, doesn't that smell good?
That smells really good.
All right, now I'm going to take the vegetables out of the skillet. And of course, there are some good flavored brown bits in this skillet, which we don't want to lose. So I'm going to add a little bit of water. This is 1/4 cup of water. I'm just going to scrape up these flavorful brown vegetable bits. We're going to save them and add them into the stew.
Okay.
Let's take a look at what's in the pot. That smells good. The way you know if it's done is to test a potato. Would you like to test a potato?
Yes, I would.
It's going to be hot, just to warn you. I know you know.
Is that why I'm here?
It's good, isn't it? So the potatoes are cooked through, but they have held their shape. So I'm going to actually turn the heat off because, of course, we need to add the quick cooking vegetables to the pot, but we don't want them to really cook anymore. They'll turn mushy and soft. And, of course, let's not forget our flavorful water. So we're just going to stir them in.
That looks good.
Doesn't that look good? All right, so off the heat, I'm just going to put the lid on so it retains a little bit of warmth, and we're going to let it sit before we taste it. All right, so this jimbota has been sitting for about 20 minutes. Oh, and it smells so good. So to finish it off, we're gonna add 1 cup of chopped fresh basil.
Think that was enough basil?
Yeah.
That was,
you know, for a vegetable stew, you really need to add a lot of good herbs to brighten things up. And of course, I'll taste it for salt. You're gonna like this. You're gonna have a bowl.
Italian vegetable stew. That is very good.
It has a meaty taste to it, but really it's all vegetables and water.
The tomato paste does have that umami flavor, but I think when you sauteed it, it really deepened it.
Yeah, that water that goes into the saute pan, you scrape up those bits, that really adds a depth of flavor.
This is really good. So to make a great Italian vegetable stew, I think you have to really know your vegetables. 3 kinds here. We had the eggplant, which got zapped to get rid of some of the moisture, with the longer, slower cooking vegetables, the potatoes, my favorite, and onions. And then we also had some zucchini, and we had some bell peppers. Make up a tostada and add that really at the end. So there you have it, from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a great Italian vegetable stew.